Going to read our scripture.
Good morning. Okay. Matthew 6, 1 through 4. All right, bear with me. I'm not a very good reader, but see how we can do. Be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others to be seen by them. Otherwise, you will have no reward with your Father in heaven. So whenever you give to the poor, don't sound a trumpet before you, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, to be applauded by the people. Truly I tell you, they have their reward. But when you give to the poor, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. My senior seminar class in college consisted of 10 guys and 1 girl, all set to graduate with some variant of a theology degree by the end of the semester. It is worth noting off the bat, the one girl that sat in our midst ran circles around us, academically speaking. She now works for a Bible translating company and is fluent in a ridiculous amount of languages. But the other 9 of us were a rather motley crew, I guess you could say, all with some underlining motivation to one day march into ministry and church leadership in various forms and capacities. And I would love to say that all of those motivations were inspired something along the lines of they all loved Jesus and wanted to help other people love Jesus. But that's not totally true. Now, some 12 years later, of the 10 of us, 2 of us are now in full-time Baptist ministry in churches. A couple have then opted to leave the Baptist world and have landed in liturgical or more charismatic traditions. My roommate and my closest friend now works as the head of discipleship for the Tennessee Baptist Convention. A few of us then opted out of ministry altogether, instead pursuing careers, teaching, or in insurance sales. And one never did graduate, but he was instead arrested and is 12 years into a 40-year prison sentence. That's a story for another time, so we'll glaze right past it. Here's my point. If you could travel back and sit around that conference table and listen as we prepped senior theses and discussed C.S. Lewis books and reminisced on the previous 4 years of school and anticipated future ministry assignments, you could make some assumptions of what motivated a certain individual based off of who's engaged in the conversation versus who's dozing off at the table. But declaratively knowing another person's motivation, trying to lay claim that you can know the internal drive that makes them chase after a degree or a career, the driving force that pulls them up and out of bed in the morning, well, knowing that's nearly impossible. Because motivation, it's not something that's tangible. You can't see it, you can't harvest it, you can't sell it. Now that doesn't stop companies from trying to sell it to you, but I would just let you know straight up, if a company is saying they can sell you motivation, they're lying to you. Or the motivation they are selling is fickle at best, because you can't measure or gauge motivation's authenticity. 2 people can do the exact thing, take the exact same course of action. They can pursue the same degree, the same career path, study the exact same list of books, but the action can mean something very different depending on the heart that lies underneath it all. So one might have that based off of love and conviction and identity, while another person can take the exact same action but have it stem out of pressure and insecurity and fear and ego. And oftentimes it's only long, arduous swaths of time that reveal the true heart behind someone's action. So maybe this is a little bit counterintuitive to the point today, but consider this right here, me standing up here preaching in front of you. Let's start here. Is it a good thing to get up with a prepped sermon and try to teach the Bible well publicly? I think so. You can interact with me a little bit. I know, we started with like philosophical motivation. Don't worry, here in a little bit we get to talk post-enlightenment and altruism. So what a day for you. But generally speaking, it is a good thing. I would hope it is a good thing. I have given my life to it, but why am I doing it? Well, it could be that I'm up here because sincerely, I do love Jesus so much, and I have this deep-seated belief that there was a divine calling on my life when I was 14 years old, and I want to live out the rest of my career helping other people love Jesus too. Or it could be that I'm up here because, well, it is my job, and there is a paycheck that rides on this that will hit my bank account somewhere in the next 2 weeks, and turns out moving to the city has doubled my mortgage, and I have 2 boys that just keep demanding more calories, typically in the form of Eggo waffles and bananas. And have you seen grocery prices recently? Or I could be up here because I never really got to experience power as a kid, and now that I've garnered some sort of authoritative position in my career as an adult, I am compensating for some sort of deep wound buried in my past. And to have a room of 100 or so people grant me their unfettered attention, man, it really scratches an itch. And here's the thing, the observable action of me standing right here in this pulpit with a book that I'm teaching on and a manuscript of notes, the action more or less looks the same regardless of the hidden motivation, and you might never know the difference. So if you want my honest answer, just to put on some authenticity, it's way more complicated than that. Because I can tell you that my motivation is rarely 100% pure. Now, I truly believe that Jesus put a calling on my life for ministry at 14, and I sincerely love him, and I want nothing more than to help others love him more through studying and learning about his word. But at the same time, I also know that it is really hard not to tie ego to performance and not to tie ego to being liked. And I have this thing, well, I really like being liked. It feels really good. Have you been liked by people before? You just keep chasing that high. So it has become imperative that I routinely and prayerfully evaluate my motivations when it comes to this title and this job that I bear. Because it turns out, even the most obvious and necessary spiritual disciplines, the very commands God has laid to us and called good in his world, well, they can do more harm than good if motivation's off key. So welcome to what Jesus is going on about in Matthew chapter 6. He has just come off of a handful of case studies of what he calls kingdom righteousness, showing that in his kingdom, it's not just concerned with this external behavior or actions, but with the internal heart that lies underneath the surface. So Jesus wants to pierce through our external actions and transform us from the inside out, so that in his kingdom, it's not just do not murder. It's, hey, don't nurse contempt. And it's not don't commit adultery. It's do not reduce another person to an object of your desire. It is not keep your oaths, but it's, hey, be the type of person who doesn't have to make oaths in the first place, that your yes is always yes and your no is always no. It's not just limit your retaliation, it's do not confront evil by becoming evil. It's not just love your neighbor, but it is love beyond the lines to your neighbor and into the enemy's territory as well. Love your enemy. And now in Matthew 6, Jesus is going to move from what we might call the obvious moral failures, the negative things that we are not to do, into 3 particular good things that he wants you to do. 3 standard religious practices of his day that everyone in his culture, in ancient Near Eastern Jewish culture, would have aspired to, namely giving to the poor, or if you're reading a King James version, what might be called almsgiving, to prayer and to fasting. And apart from prayer, Jesus really doesn't go into depth on any of these instructions. He just kind of assumes the action and then targets the motivation. When you give, don't be like. When you pray, when you fast, Jesus stares right through the external actions of moral piety and says, hey, in my kingdom, I need you to examine your why. why is it that you do the good things you do? Why is it that you serve? Why do you give? Why do you volunteer? Why do you help? That is the question. And it's the one we'll come back to at the very end. Why am I doing the things I'm doing? And that matters because in Jesus' kingdom, the goal is not simply uphold this external veneer of morality. The goal is intrinsic to us. It is to become like Jesus from the inside out, to become the type of person whose life internally and externally is being remade and transformed by the Spirit granted us from the Father through Jesus. So yes, this morning Jesus is specifically talking about giving, but underneath this and the next two, prayer and fasting, he is confronting something deeper, this exhausting human need to be seen and validated and honored and approved. So the whole point, the final destination of all of this is simply this: Jesus' kingdom frees us from the need to be seen. But we'll push through the text to get there. So let's kick verse 1. Be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others to be seen by them. Otherwise, you will have no reward with your Father in heaven. Now, if you've been around and paying close attention, you know that just a few moments ago in chapter 5, Jesus has already said, let your light shine so that they might see your good works. And I know that was months ago for us, but if you were listening to Jesus preach this sermon, that was just a few moments ago in recent memory. So wait a minute, Jesus, that feels a little bit to me like a contradiction. I mean, first it was, let your light shine so that your good works can be seen. And now it's, don't practice your righteousness so that others will see. So which is it? Well, it's worth noting that both of these verses have a hanging modifier on the end. So in chapter 5, he clarifies, let your light shine that others may see, that they may glorify their Father in heaven. And then here his reasoning is, do not practice your righteousness that you may be seen. The difference is in the heart motivation behind it. So the starting point of all of this in chapter 6 is anytime your motivation is self-focused, anytime it sprouts out of this internal need to be seen or to get credit, you have already lost what Jesus is after. See, Jesus thinks the issue is not visibility. The point of this is not become secret agent Christian so no one knows what's happening. The point is vanity. That's what he's after. And Jesus knows, tucked away in every human heart is this web of complex motivations, hence his opening words in chapter 6, be careful. To be clear, Jesus is not saying, don't do good works, or if you do good works, make sure it is so hidden that no one ever knows about them. It is, be careful. Jesus repeatedly assumes that discipleship to him entails discipline and practice. Again, when you give, when you pray, when you fast, he will later in this very same sermon in chapter 7 saying, everyone who hears these words of mine and acts on them will be like a wise man. The Greek word for acts in chapter 7 is the same one here in chapter 6, verse 1, but be careful not to practice your righteousness. Clearly, Jesus has some standard of expectation regarding what we do or don't do, what we practice or don't practice, and he is adamant that his followers live by a totally new and different standard than the rest of the world. The problem then is how this hum of the human heart has a tendency to take a good work and try to build it into a platform. And just like 2,000 years ago, we still live in a world where everyone seems to be vying for a more prominent platform. We, according to pastor and author Mark Sayers, tend to live by a platform mentality. It is the thesis of his book, Platform to Pillars. He writes, over the last several decades, the platform mentality has become the dominant script for living our lives. We've transitioned from a society emphasizing communal well-being to one where we're told we each deserve to sit atop our platform, a device that ensures we will be seen and thus validated. And isn't that how we gauge Validation? How many people see us and listen to us and approve to us with their nods? And here's the catch. That feels like a commodity, but it is not a commodity in our culture. I mean, just go on to social media algorithms, like enough things that it will identify your preferred niche, and then post away, letting the floods of approval ring true to your ears and verify your validity. And every time it does, you will want more. And Jesus seems to think that validation from other humans, it is both fleeting and dangerous. So he says, be careful. Because you might just get it. You might do all these things to the applause of the humans around you, and it is liable to mess you up. Because Jesus says, before Jesus says anything specific about giving or praying or fasting, he goes ahead and sets his thesis. Do not turn these practices into a reputation management system. Do not turn devotion into theater. And don't think that my way is a platform to your visibility. And if you do, his words is, you will have no reward with your Father in heaven. And we'll talk about it more later, but just briefly, to be sure, the word reward, it does feel strange to us, right? Am I the only one that feels a little odd reading about reward? Because many of us, we've been taught, and rightfully so, that we don't obey God in order to earn some reward from him. There is no moral trade exchange in heaven with angelic accountants keeping track of things. Oh, I see you've given to the poor for the last 3 years combined. If my calculations are correct, that puts you in the new Tesla category of rewards. Congratulations. Turns out we do not give or fast or pray so that God will like us. We do not serve in hopes of somehow garnering God's approval. Even so, Jesus does not hesitate to use the word reward all throughout this passage. So the question is, well, what kind of reward? And that's not explicitly clarified, but later he will tie the concept of reward to applause of people. And we have a word for that. We use the word honor. And Jesus seems to admit that you can employ his ways to build some sort of honor amidst the culture around you, which will feel good in the moment. But Jesus believes is not satisfactory in the long term, and it will leave you wanting more, because turns out human applause, it's a terrible reward. It's fragile and somehow still addictive. It is unstable. And you know as well as I do, you can receive 100 compliments and they will get trounced by the one criticism. You will lay in bed at night thinking about why that one person doesn't like you. Or at least I do. So be careful. That's Jesus' word. Be careful about building your life on this need to be seen. Be careful about turning righteousness into a performance. Be careful about taking the things that are meant to align you with the heart of God and using them to climb the feeble ladder of human approval. So he goes into his 3 observations then. Verse 2, so whenever you give to the poor, don't sound the trumpet before you as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the streets. Now, it's worth noting a couple things. One, when Jesus, and really anywhere in the Bible, uses the term trumpet, don't think like brass orchestra instrument trumpet. Think more shofar. That's the image, this ram's horn that's been hollowed out and used to make a loud noise, initiated and used in Hebraic worship services. And it doesn't seem by any historical standard that there were like Pharisees marching through the streets of Jerusalem with fanfare and parade going, blow the shofar, I'm about to give to this poor person over here. Everyone come out and look at me. We don't have any indication of that. So either Jesus is being hyperbolic or he's giving this little play on words, which I think is what's happening here. We do have a little bit from the Mishnah on how they would take up offerings for the poor at the local synagogue. So this is from the Mishnah Torah, Shekel dues 2:1. How would the money changers collect the shekalim? In each and every city, they positioned 2 chests before them. The bottoms of the chests were wide, the tops were narrow like a shofar, so that the money could be deposited in them, but they could not be removed from them. So it seems like what was happening is the chests were one way and the shofar was flipped upside down, so that the wide part of the shofar was at top and you could drop your money in. It would circle down the ram's horn into the box, and then no one could take a little 5-finger grab down out of the box and take that home with them. Of course, the way it worked is in a non-cash society, but in a coin society, when you dropped your coins through the shofar horn, it would make a sound. It would rattle. Hence the story where Jesus is in the synagogue and the rich people come in and they pour their money into it and everyone oohs and ahs at the sound of the money dripping down into the box. And then the widow comes in with the 2 mites that would have barely made any sound at all, and Jesus says, "That's what I'm after." It seems to be a similar play here with what Jesus is saying. Hey, don't rattle the horns. That's what the hypocrites do. That's what Jesus says. Now, the term hypocrite in our day has morphed meanings over the years, and it's taken far more of a negative connotation. We use it as a pejorative exclusively. But when Jesus uses the word hypocrite, it isn't negative. It's just a Greek word that means an actor, which that's in theme with his point. If you trace back up to verse 1, he'll say, "Do not practice your righteousness in front of others, that you may be seen." That you may be seen is one Greek word, theoreo, which is just a fun word to say, right? Do you want to say it? Okay, no one's awake. That's all right. It's where we get our word theater from. And so hypocrite is to be an actor. So he's saying these people are living their lives in a performance on stage, and they are actors amidst the stage. And Jesus absolutely condemns that, but his reasoning is interesting. I mean, we tend to condemn hypocrisy because it damages the reputation of the church, and there is a truth to that. Please do not go and live as if the things we say and believe don't matter, that the world would look on them and miss what we're about. But Jesus takes it on another direction. He says this: "Don't sound the trumpet before you, giving to the poor as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the streets." And he says, "To be applauded by people. Truly I tell you, they already have their reward." He keeps using the reward language. Jesus acknowledges that if you go and do the good things to gain attention from others, you can probably do it. You can drum up influence and make people like you more. You can receive your pat on the back and your congratulations and that bubbly feeling that comes with it all. But Jesus believes that motivation is not enough to bring satisfaction or significance into your life. So he calls his followers to a much better reality, one where they are freed from the opinions around them. Verse 3, "But when you give, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing." And a lot of times we tend to interpret this as, be so secretive that you don't even know what you gave. Just close your eyes, grab out your wallet, and throw some money in the plate, and we'll see what happens. I don't think that's what Jesus is after here. Here's again Dallas Willard, who I've quoted a lot through this series. The kind of people who have been so transformed by their daily walk with God that good deeds naturally flow from their character are precisely the kind of people whose left hand would not notice what their right hand is doing. What they do naturally, simply because of what they are, pervasively and internally. Their deeds are in secret, no matter who's watching, for they are absorbed in love of God and of those around them. This is the all-star athlete who has so perfected her sport that she can just do a triple back handspring without thinking about it, or the musician that can sit down, look at sheet music, and start playing, or join in with the band without previously practicing. It's not at that point even about impressing people. It's just a natural outflow of who they are and what they do. In Jesus' mind, when his followers give everything over to him, these actions, giving to the poor and prayer and fasting, it's just a natural outflow of the love for God, something that comes out of the wellspring of a transformed heart, so that, verse 4, your giving may be in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you. Do you hear the word reward over and over and over in this passage? What is this? Well, I think in a word, this is just freedom. free from the entrapping thoughts of trying to find the right balance between others' compliments and their critiques into the everlasting affirmation of the Heavenly Father. Because while the world around you will only offer fickle approval that will ebb and flow based off of the day, the Father sees the quiet sacrifice and the hidden generosity, the mercy and patience that no one else appreciates, and he sees the obedience that no one else notices. And that then, recognizing what the Father sees and how he thinks, that is where true freedom is found. The approval of the Father that has already been given to you through the Son. See, we live in a post-enlightened world where we've inherited this philosophical idea that's called altruism. I told you, post-enlightenment and altruism, it was coming back for you, so here it is. It's this philosophical understanding of morality that's been championed by the likes of guys and philosophers. Man, I shouldn't have even went there. It's too late today. Guys like Immanuel Kant with the resonating battle cry that sounds like, do the right thing because it's the right thing. And that feels really pious, so much so that we almost balk at Jesus' words here. Give to the poor so that your Father in heaven might give you a reward? No. Wait a minute, Jesus. I'm not supposed to do good to receive a reward. I'm supposed to do good because of good. It's what I'm supposed to do. It all just flows together like that. But what if Jesus was far more in tune with the complexities of the human heart than what Immanuel Kant could have ever imagined? Knowing that even when we suggest moral good should be our sole motivator, right for the sake of right, that somehow we still fall captive to this desperate need of approval every day, waking up to another courtroom trial, where every conversation is levied as evidence and every success becomes material for our defense and every failure fodder for the persecution. And there's some faceless jury out there that holds our future verdict in their hands solely based off of how they perceive our actions. And you can live that way, but you should be aware that it is an ever-pressurized, miserable way to live life. Who else to better say that than Madonna? Here's a Madonna quote from a Vogue magazine interview. My drive in life comes from a fear of being mediocre. That's always pushing me. I push past one spell of it, but then I feel as if I'm still mediocre and uninteresting unless I do something else. Because even though I've become somebody, I still have to prove that I am somebody. My struggle has never ended, and I guess it never will. What if Jesus is not after morality merely for morality's sake? What if he is offering something so much deeper? Holistic restoration and healing to the very core of our souls. What if he knows that by design how humans function and what we need to have a real solution to the problem that it seems none of us can fully solve, from Madonna all the way to pastors, so that in a world where reward feels so uncertain from my colleagues and peers in the world around me, we could actually have courage to abandon the system altogether only to bask in the reward that has already been promised by the Father. The only reward that can satiate our deepest need, the approval of the one true God of the universe. Because turns out we are all born with this desperate need for attention and approval. My 3-year-old, he will do something, anything, and almost instantly look up, lock eyes with me, and seek some approval. He will hit a baseball and go, "Did I hit that baseball far, Dada?" Like, "Yeah, I got to walk to go get it." Or he will scribble on a piece of paper, hand it to his mom and go, "Do you like it, Mama?" He will jump 2 inches off the ground, trip over his feet, fall face down, and look up through a toothy grin and go, "Dada, how high do I jump?" If you come to my house, he will likely either drag you into his bedroom or drag everything in his bedroom out of it that he is proud of just to show it to you one by one. And that will not go away. Over time, he will develop some sophistication and some dignity, but it's still going to be buried inside of him, and I know that because it's still deep inside me. Ever trying to size up myself and my church to prove my own significance, from sitting around a senior seminar class hoping that my comments might catch the attention of the professor, to sitting with another pastor wondering whose church is bigger and who's better at Greek. All the while, God has come to rescue me from that. That our God has come to rescue us from the prison of ego-driven approval, giving us his full attention by becoming like us, taking on flesh, and then giving up the perfect life he lived here on earth in order to redeem us, to grant us his perfection, that in Jesus, the approval of the Father is poured out to whoever would live under the cross. Not because we deserve it, but because that is how much he loves us. And Jesus wants that to transform everything about us all the way down to our motivation, that we might truly experience freedom. Here's Tim Keller. Wouldn't you want to be a person who does not need honor, but nor is afraid of it? Someone who does not lust for recognition, but is not frightened to death of it. Don't you want to be the kind of person who, when they see themselves in a mirror or reflected in the shop window, they don't admire what they see, but they don't cringe either? This is the possibility for us if we keep going where the Bible is going, a place where I can actually enjoy things for what they are. This is gospel humility, blessed self-forgetfulness. It's not thinking more of myself or less of myself. It's just simply thinking of myself less. And that is the freedom Jesus' kingdom puts on offer. It is not pretending we don't care in some spiritual mode of apathy. It is not becoming emotionally numb. It is the simple celebration. You're not on trial anymore. The verdict has already been declared. In Jesus, there is now no condemnation. In Jesus, you are beloved. In Jesus, the Father sees you and lovingly calls you daughter, son. And when we can live in that kingdom, then we don't need to be seen. Jesus' kingdom frees us from the need to be seen. But how does all of this play out? Look, the reality is Del Norte is likely never going to be the cool church. I'm not aimed at trying to make us the cool church. That's not the goal. And we may largely go unnoticed. Now, don't mishear me. I still want to be relevant. I want to be unignorable by the people who desperately need Jesus. I want us to be the hands and feet of Jesus in our community. But the goal is not to get everyone in Albuquerque talking about us. We don't need a little church merch shop when you walk in selling Del Norte hats. I'm not trying to slam churches that have that, but that is not our goal. It was never about that. It's about going out day after day and doing the work God has called us to, loving people and serving people and giving generously and teaching the scriptures and welcoming the outsider and caring for the vulnerable and showing mercy that no one may applaud, all because who cares if people see us and celebrate us? I don't need to be celebrated. We don't need to be celebrated. But I do want them to see what we're doing and lock eyes with the Father. And for us to, as we're doing it, lock eyes with the Father and find that, well, that's where freedom breaks loose. That the Father who glances at us through the sacrifice of Jesus then frees us to worship and frees us to live and frees us to dethrone ego and pride and everything that comes with it, because he has given himself for us for our rescue. And I just can't imagine and long for a day that a church gets defined by that. What does that look like? When everything we want gets tabled and it all goes back to God who has already granted his approval. Never about how big we are or how much money we have, but all about the mission we've been welcomed into. But that starts with you, and it starts with me. So we come back to that question. Why do you do what you do? What's your motivation? What are you trying to build and what are you trying to garner from this world around you? And if the answer is anything but the Father's love and approval, you've missed it. And again, don't hear me say those good works are what earn the Father's approval. He has already given it, but it is returned to him, and it is where we recognize the approval of the Father is poured out on us. But just like you can't lay any claim on knowing my internal motivations, I can't lay any claim to knowing your internal motivations. That's something you and God have to deal with. So what's your motivation? And maybe you're sitting there going, I just long for that freedom you were talking about. You're telling me there's a way that I don't have to be concerned about what my boss thinks or my siblings think or what this community around me think. I can be free to live only about what God thinks through Jesus. That's the joy of the gospel. And if you've never known that, I would love to talk to you. I will be right up here, and it would be my joy to pray for you. But we're going to have a few moments now to just reflect on all of this, for you to ask the question, okay, God, what's my motivation? And then to join me in praying that the motivation of Del Norte would only be the reward of the Father poured out on us, and that it would make an eternal impact on this city. Father God, thank you that you have granted us freedom. Freedom that is not about what others.
Thank you so much for joining us here online at Del Norte Baptist Church. We're so grateful you took the time. We want to just take a few moments and let you know what we're all about here. We sincerely believe that Jesus Christ, God in flesh, stepped into time, walked the lives that we walk, lived perfectly, and then gave that up for us. And for anyone and everyone that would put their faith in him, there is renewal, forgiveness, restoration, life as God intended. And that comes with the promise of eternal life, but it also comes with the promise of what God intends life to be like here. If that's something you want to know more about, please email me, philip@dnbc.org. That's Philip at Del Norte Baptist Church, dnbc.org. I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much.